What's up, Michael? Hey, Jonathan.
Hello.
Hello. Hey, Jay, how's it going?
Not too bad at all. Sitting here with a huge power outage in the area. I'm on my cell phone. Cell phone until power gets restored. I'm actually going to end up going to work at my gym today. But it's still pretty early, so I'll head out there after this meeting.
Where are you with this massive power outage?
We're into the second day now.
Oh man, that's annoying. Dang.
Oh yeah, it's annoying. It is. And it's just this one area that I'm in too. There's power, like maybe I guess if you want to walk 30 yards, there's power in the buildings over there 30 yards away, and then down the street. It's just where I'm at and up the hill.
You need a long extension cord. That's what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. Such is life. How you doing?
Yeah, not bad. It's we're having no power outages, but the weather here is extraordinary. It's going to be like 70 degrees in Boulder today, and then it's going to snow tonight.
Wow.
We're going through a traditional Colorado spring at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I was in St. Louis, Missouri during basic training, and I tell everybody, 4 seasons, 1 day.
Yes,
yeah, all 4
exactly.
seasons, 1 day.
All right, let's give folks a few more minutes and then we'll get started. Hey, Melba. Okay, let's give it 1 more minute for the last stragglers. All right, sweet. Let us begin. You're welcome, Elba. I signed you in. I was using my time to transcribe names from the roster of the meeting into the doc. I think I got everyone. Oh, Joshua's here. Welcome, everyone. I wanted to start off by just giving the opportunity for anyone who's new to this meeting who wants to introduce himself to do so. If you're new to this meeting and don't want to introduce yourself, that is also fine. But if you want to say hey, that's totally cool, and now is the time to do it.
I'm new. I can say hi. I work with Joshua. I assume you all know him, but I work at VMware. I'm a principal engineer in our open source program office, and I'm primarily tasked with work around software supply chain security. And I don't know, Joshua, can I say why I'm here in a little more detail?
Sure.
So Joshua's leaving VMware, and I'm picking up some slack related to that. So it's congratulations to him, but also I'm trying to activate a little bit more. So if you haven't seen me in some of these spaces, you'll probably see me more.
Sweet. Welcome, Tim. Thank you. And Joshua, I understand that you're going to still be involved in some of this stuff, but from a different vantage point.
That sounds right. Yeah. I absolutely intend to still be here and around in the OpenSSF and other ecosystems working in the supply chain security space.
Excellent. Melba, you have your hand up.
That was my question. I'm like, you're not leaving us, are you? You're still staying.
I'm still staying. Yep.
Cool. And then we have in the chat, we have Benjamin Schmidt, who is from MITRE, and posted an introduction into the chat for folks who want to look for it there. And Benjamin's audio isn't working, so we will keep an eye on the chat. Hey, Benjamin, welcome to you too. And Tim, great to have you here. Joshua, I'm excited that you're still going to be involved in all this stuff. That's awesome. Just before we get started going down the agenda, I wanted to just invite a little bit more discussion on the 2023 vision. I also hoped maybe we could pull an update on SALSA, on S2C2F, and Fresca as well. Does anyone, before we get started on that, does anyone have anything they'd like to add to the agenda?
I kind of want to ask about the working group leadership, because I think that it's not anyone who regularly attends the working group meeting. So I'm wondering, I keep wondering if we should try and like have some kind of process for like promoting new leadership, or whether everyone's comfortable with the current situation. But it feels like something worth discussing.
That seems like an excellent topic to begin with. Tell me more, Joshua.
Well, last time I checked so I think the repository in the GitHub org is the kind of canonical place to document these things. And last time I checked, Dan Lawrence and Kim Lewandowski were listed as the working group leads. But they haven't been around for a while. As to the best of my knowledge, I haven't seen them when I've attended the meetings anyway. And Isaac, you've been doing a bunch of the meeting facilitation and drafting the, the vision document. So it seems like there's obviously some leadership being done by you in this space. And I think we should recognize your leadership and ensure that the working group is positioned to continue to grow and be successful in the future. It's an important space that we're all invested in.
That is a good point. So, I mean, does anyone? I mean, I guess I should go back to Dan and Kim with questions about this, but it feels to me like we should maybe start with updating. I'm just looking here. Updated. Essentially, are we saying that we should be updating the record of this working group leadership in GitHub and start there and have that documented leadership better represent the reality of the situation?
I think that'd be a great start.
Okay.
Mike's had his hand up, so we should call him.
Yeah. So I know officially Dan stepped down a while ago, but I guess it just never got recorded in the GitHub. Because I know he was just like, hey, I think he got accepted into the TAC and was like, I'm just not going to have enough time for this. I guess the README never got updated to reflect that. And then separately, I think to the other point is like, yeah, I know that Kim sort of mentioned like she just doesn't have the time to attend these meetings anymore, and which is like, hey, that's okay. But then we just need to, I think, have a process. And I know that's why she had said, hey, I think Isaac is a great fit, and he has been. I just don't think we've like there's two problems. One is I know OpenSSF is going to want, like, just more generally, they're going to want to have a bit more of it being formalized in some way. Of like, was there a vote? I don't think there. I personally don't think there needs to be a vote, but they're going to probably ask some of those questions as well. And Melba, just as FYI, I believe OpenSSF has an actual process for how this is supposed to go about, as far as like chairs of working groups. And in fact, I think in general, I believe there's supposed to be 2 chairs. I don't know, but yeah, Jake.
Yeah, so this is a simple working group vote. And you're right, the 2 chairs. This is a simple working group vote. And then all we do after we vote and we decide who's going to be the chair, all we do is tell that to the TAC. That's not that's not something that's incredibly difficult to do. The working group governs itself in that manner. So if it, with the people on the call today, there's 10 of us here today, and I'm not sure whether it's a voting member constitutes whoever's sitting there on GitHub, or it can be who's ever attended working group meetings. That I want to say that the ruling number has been at least 6 working group meetings, and have been contributing and.
Oh, we lost Jay. Oh, Jay's back again.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we lost you for a little bit there, but you're back.
Yeah, like I said, I don't see why we can't do a simple vote for two people, Isaac being one of them, of course, because he's been holding the mantle now for the last few meetings, but one other. I mean, I'll sit there and throw my name in the hat. I'll throw Melba's name in the hat, and I'll throw Mike's name in the hat, since we're across the board on everything that we've done. I mean, if you can vote for Isaac, I think Isaac sitting in that top seat is great, and then everyone can vote on the rest of us. And then after that, it's just as simple as going to the TAC and saying, "Hey, TAC, working group chairs for the supply chain integrity working group are now Isaac, and then whoever else we okay, so Mike has so Mike has declined. But it's we go to the TAC and say, these are the working group chairs for the supply chain integrity working group, and then we march forward. I mean, I think that's and then we update the GitHub and update everything else. No, Isaac doesn't get a chance to decline. Sorry. Yeah. Mike doesn't get Isaac doesn't get a chance to decline. So I'll throw my name in the hat. Melba throws her name in the hat. Everyone else here decide on either myself or Melba. Isaac, you're in the top spot. Sorry, and we go from there.
No, that's all good. I mean, and I was just looking back through the notes to determine kind of when we last saw Kim. I think September or so was the last time, but I remember in October she had asked me. She said, "Hey, she doesn't have time to come to this much. Would I mind kind of stepping in?" And so I did that, and I don't want to decline. I also don't want to get in the way of anyone else's ambitions of leading this thing, because I stepped in to fill in for Kim. Nothing really any more than that, and I certainly wasn't. I wasn't nominating myself to be lead, even though I've been kind of driving these meetings. In terms of, I mean, so do we? Jay, are you suggesting that we should have a vote here? Actually, Arno, why don't you go, since you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that. I mean, what was said before was mostly true. I think Jake pretty much nailed it in terms of the process. There's not much. I do want to point out that today the GitHub repository for this working group has an empty governance that still says to do. So that doesn't help much. But in fact, there is no absolute requirements at the organization level to have 2 chairs or how those decisions are made. Each group can pretty much decide to do this. It should have been, the group should have gone through the process of figuring out their governance and the charter a long time ago. It has not happened. So, I think it would be good at some point if somebody could get to do that. But so, yes, essentially, if people who typically participate and say, yeah, we're happy to have you as becoming the chair, nobody is going to object. And from a process point of view, we're okay. We can indeed just inform the TAC of the change, and that's it.
Okay. I mean, it sounds like, my name's tentatively slotted for chair. It sounds like Melba and Jay as co-chairs. I don't like to Arno's point, like it sounds like there's no specific prescription around how many chairs and co-chairs we have. And so my preference would be to invite Jay and Melba both to co-chair. Rather than us having to choose one. Does that feel reasonable as a kind of the intention of this group here on this meeting? And then I'll figure out the mechanics of what that looks like to take it forward.
I think one good way to actually do that is to do a pull request against the repository that names the leaders of the group, and
Okay.
have everybody else say, yeah, yeah. And then you can go back to the TAC or whoever, if they ever question, how do you come up with that? You can say, well, this is, it's all in GitHub.
That is a great plan. So let me just put that in the notes here.
This meeting's recorded, so we can do a like a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Poll in this meeting. I do agree that using the GitHub process seems sensible, but it's much more open to drive-by voting for people that don't actually attend the meeting. So I'd be inclined to do both effectively.
Like, barely attend this meeting, so like I know that I'm gonna I will abstain. I figured people who barely attend would abstain.
That's when it goes well and people dissent. But
has anybody read the recent Vex drama on the vulnerability disclosure?
Jonathan, stop. Stop.
I think
I'm sorry, I'm bringing up something traumatic for half the group. I'm so sorry.
Yes, exactly. But so in this case, I always find it funny. People seem to think, being chair is such a controversial thing. But I mean, for me, it's like, I'm very grateful to the people who are willing to volunteer for that job. That's typically thankless.
You're really selling it to me, Arno.
Thanks, Isaac, for being voluntold to be this chair.
Yeah, you've just by definition made it not thankless now, Josh, because you just thanked me. So in the notes, I documented a proposal, me as chair, Jay and Melba as co-chairs. Do we want to do a show of hands on that here for video posterity purposes?
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I think we do a show of hands here and then we confirm it with the pull requests. That's my.
Melba, is your hand up as a vote or is your hand up as a?
No. It's a question, right? Because I think there's like 2 people that are not voting, and there's not really a whole lot. So, is there a concern about the lack of? I mean, I can't vote. Jay can't vote, right? You can't vote, Isaac, technically. So. No. How many votes?
I think you guys can. I don't agree with that. You can, because you're voting for the others. So
let me do it this way. How about we do this? I will invite anyone, and I will not take it personally. I swear. I will invite anyone to object to this. If there are no objections in this group, I will create a PR on the README, document that there were no objections in this meeting, and that the PR on the README, anyone else who wants to weigh in on that PR can do so, and I'll drop a link to it in the Slack. It feels to me like
a good way
that's a reasonable. So any objections to this as a proposal?
No objections. I was more or less going to suggest the same thing. I think the only thing is just make sure that also, if possible, I guess when this gets uploaded to YouTube, make sure that that's also linked in the PR, and then also where you post in Slack is linked to the PR, just because one of the things that's happened a couple of times, and it's just because of keeping track of it is not the easiest. Sometimes folks are like, wait, which meeting did this actually happen in, and where can I find the exact link to that meeting? Because I would have objected, or it's not that anybody ever really does. It's just that I know from a governance standpoint, some folks are like, did we actually dot our I's and cross our T's and make sure that actually we did have a vote, and that this discussion here, where I think largely, as far as I can tell, nobody's objected yet. We've all sort of agreed and kind of pushed through it. I know that from Brian in particular, he wants to make sure that he has something to point to say, yes, we did follow the rules.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, because the last thing you want to do is kind of in 18 months' time, someone to declare something that we did invalid because there isn't sufficient audit trail to connect the dots and make it governance-ly proper. Okay, so closing this issue out, I have the action. Let me just assign that to myself. Woo. Or I'll just minimize the window and shoot myself in the foot. I'm going to add myself as the owner of this action. I will create the PR. Good call on, I will note in the PR that there are no objections in the meeting. I'll include a link to the meeting video when it's available, and I will publicize this proposal. It's not a decision yet, the proposal in a Slack message, and I will link that in the PR as well. But thank you all. Sweet. So the next item, the 2023 vision, and we're kind of a quarter of the way into 2023 now. I should call this a vision proposal. Sorry, that's very presumptive of me. It feels that, yes, the year is going very fast. It feels like we should try and get this into a shape that we're all kind of nodding along with it. I did have a look. Whoa. Does the link not work? There was an earlier version of the link that didn't work, and I updated the link. If you want to give that a try.
It works for me. The link that's in the doc, it works for me.
Okay.
Here, I'll put it here.
Thanks, Melba. So I was been taking a look at this and trying to process and close out comments. Kind of, I had a whole bunch of super useful edits from folks, regulars at the meeting, also folks I'd never even met before or heard of before, and did some work kind of incorporating those comments, taking the feedback, making improvements to the doc along the lines of the great input I was getting. And I still have some of that work to do, but one of the things that I noticed going through the comments was there wasn't any substantive disagreement or counter proposal at the high level. And so the idea, like there were certainly some comments about, wording of the mission and vision, and how to clarify the wording, and what do we mean when we say shared vocabulary, and what type of vocabulary we're going to be using. And I added some notes on that. But there wasn't anyone saying, no, this is the wrong mission, this is the wrong scope, or this vision isn't expansive enough or is too constraining. Like, there weren't any kind of high level comments about the overall shape or direction of this thing. And so I wanted to just kind of poll this group and get a sense of, should I take away from that this looks, within, a standard deviation of correct, or kind of, a first approximation of correct, or should I take away from that I need to kind of, continue pushing it and kind of, inviting feedback at the high level? Because as I said, there was lots of great ads in terms of clarifying wording, in terms of omissions that I'd made, and in some of the bullet lists of things, and all of that stuff was great. But I wanted to make sure that directionally we have agreement on the proposal here. Does anyone have anything to add or thoughts on that?
I know there's a couple of things that I had commented on about Fresca, right? Like enable adoption with tooling. I don't think that there's much on it. Like, I agree with everything on here. I think, like you said, it's just a little bit of wording or cleaning up. And now I'm thinking about the fact that there's an SCI positioning group. And where does that fit in here? Because that's recent, right? That's in like the last month. So not sure if that gets called out.
You mean in terms of the positioning working group could own this? Is that what you're thinking?
No. That's not what I was thinking. No. The priorities, like 2023 priorities, right? It talks about, the mission and vision, salsa with build in provenance, and then there's enable adoption with tooling. And then I think I made a call out for Fresca. But we also, and there's a calling for S2C2F, but now that positioning is a sub-project of SCI and not of salsa, is there something that we need to identify as that vision or mission? I don't think so. I think it kind of fits in with all of this, but just kind of a question since we are newer to the working group.
That is a good point. So I'm noting that that the SCI position group postdates the document, and there's a chance to incorporate the new structure we have into 2023 priorities. And I think you're right. And so as I go down, I mean, you'll notice in the doc, as you see, like kind of there's much more comments in the doc at the bottom, and that's because literally I've been going from top to bottom, addressing comments, incorporating feedback and so on. I just haven't gotten all the way down the doc. But as I get down to 2023 priorities, continue to incorporate the feedback, continue to refine and clarify. I will add that as the role, or at least some notes on the role of the SCI positioning working group and how we see work in that group either driving or being part of the proposed 2023 priorities. Does that sound right to you, Melba?
Yeah. Just trying to figure out how it fits in, right? If we have our own, obviously we want to enable it's put under an umbrella framework, right? And communicate that framework and make sure everybody's aligned. And it's more of a, do we need to put that somewhere in here? I don't know. But if we do, then I guess now is the time to jot it down somewhere.
That makes a ton of sense. And Arno, I'll come to you. I wanted to just take one more opportunity to thank Melba and Jay for upscoping the group to SCI positioning. I think it's a much better structure. It gives a chance to focus, or not focus broadly. That's the wrong framing. But it gives a chance to consider the broader aspects much beyond salsa. And I really appreciate that you kind of did that rescoping effort. Arno, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. So first, I wanted to highlight the fact that there's no such thing as a sub-project in the OpenSSF governance structure. It should be called a positioning SIG, a special interest group. The general structure is you have the TAC, you have working groups, and a few projects. And then under these working groups, you can have projects or SIGs. The distinction between a project and a SIG is a SIG, a project, it's easier to, is code. Primarily about producing code, while a SIG that's not its primary function. So I think in the case of positioning, it definitely falls into the category of SIGs. I do also wanted to say, I have attended quite a few of the positioning meetings, and one thing that seems to have happened is because this working group has not been very active, we have been lacking a body where we could have some kind of coordination level type of discussion between the different activities, namely SAL, Fresca, and S2C2F. And so, but I think this should be the place where those conversations take place.
Melba.
And Melba can correct me if I'm wrong, but I always thought positioning was more about the communication aspect.
Positioning is also about finding gaps. Like for example, when we scoped it for salsa, we said, okay, if there's any gaps, there's any overlaps, how do we communicate that? How do we enable salsa to be better? So now it's just a broader scope. Obviously, we can talk about that here in terms of maybe vision of what each group, including positioning, should focus on. But I think it's always been in the charter that any gaps or overlap that we find, we're able to effectively communicate to the community and help improve the framework. So I would think it's the same for S2C2F and Fresca. And in terms of sub-projects, I kept calling it sub-project because it's in the notes all the way at the top. It says sub-projects. So I just put special interest groups. So I think that's where I got the naming from.
Yeah, to provide a little bit of context as to, I think, why some of this all kind of happened was with a lot of the effort being focused on, let's say, salsa for a little while and some of the other stuff, this group, like as in this particular meeting, got sort of deprioritized a little bit. And then also with folks like the co-chairs who got pulled into other priorities. The meeting first, I think, went from, I think it was weekly, and then it went to bi-weekly, and then eventually to monthly. And so I think that's another thing that to kind of ties into some of what Arno was saying, is that I do think that if we maybe increase the frequency back up to maybe every other week for this particular meeting, then some of that coordination would be a lot easier. Because I think that's one of the things that also was a bit of a challenge, was it's hard to do some of the course coordination when you're only doing this meeting once a month. And then I think there was a couple of meetings where the vast majority of the meeting was updates from Salsa, S2C2F, Fresca, and very little discussion on other things.
So I love, so I'm being nominated for chair, and then my workload is being doubled within the same half hour. And I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, just to chime in, you know, and as a caveat to what Melba said, some of the stuff that we've done, especially when it comes to finding gaps, led to a lot of the changes that happened over the last 6 months when it came to salsa. I mean, I remember one of our meetings, we identified a gap between what different sites, different salsa sites said about the different requirements, and that led into digging deeper on, okay, well, what does that mean exactly, right? So that's just some of the good work that comes out of it. You know, we Isaac, you, I, and Melba, we had a conversation over Slack, and we would even going into doing other things. I mean, I think what this means is, especially when it comes to you know, us coming together right now at this point, is that this very much needs to become bi-weekly again. And that just adds the direction, adds the focus into what we're doing during the positioning meeting. You know, because we are having conversations around this topic in other working group and other SIG meetings that we all attend, that should probably be had here a little bit more often, so that we can build those out and actually water those plants a little bit more, here, so we can watch them grow out across the entirety of the OpenSSF. So I mean, I'm with Arno on this more often, and that'll allow us to be a little bit more focused in the positioning meeting, so that the conversations that we're having, we don't wait a month to get guidance on a lot of that information that we're coming at, because that stuff is real time when we come about it. It's real time. Also, it should be noticed that Jennifer Bly from marketing is attending those positioning meetings now too. So when we want to get the word out, right, that word can come out a little bit more real time, a little bit more in the moment, and we do need to have the larger body in on those plans a little bit more readily. So I'm with Arno on this one, and I like the direction that we're heading in. Absolutely.
I like it too, and I think what I'm hearing, Jay, is that because this meeting hasn't been frequent enough, some of that slack has been picked up by other working groups, which might be more usefully spent on their core charters. And so, you know, we've been discussing SCI topics broadly in SCI positioning, whereas actually a more appropriate venue might be this meeting, if only it happened often enough. So I think that's reasonable. I had a slight discomfort when this meeting was moved down to monthly in the first place. I have slight discomfort again moving it back up to bi-weekly, just in terms of the workload. But I will, with my two wonderful co-chairs, I will make that adjustment. Let's do it bi-weekly. Let's make sure we have a filled agenda and use the time productively. I think, you know, I pasted in the chat kind of the way that, when we first broke Salsa out into positioning, tooling, specification, adoption, and I don't think we have the adoption group yet. I think, part of the idea of the positioning working group was to make the relationship between various products in this space clear, and there's two parts to that. There's kind of making them clear in the first place, like making sure we design Salsa and S2C, 2F, and Fresca to have kind of independent and orthogonal concerns, and then part two of that is how do we communicate that clearly, and how do we make the reality of the clarity evident to everyone looking on. And so there is a communications component to SCI positioning in my mind, but I think it's more than that. I think it's actually helping to actively shape the space to be more coherent and fit together better, not just to communicate how it fits together today, if that makes sense. So I think just in the interest of time, I want to move on from this item. What I'm hearing is it doesn't feel like there's any kind of huge discomfort or heartburn around the overall direction of the doc or the kind of the mission and vision as articulated, again, roughly. This is within a standard deviation or so, which is great input. What I will do then is continue to work through the comments all the way down the bottom of the doc. I have an update to work in with respect to SCI positioning. Melba and Jay, I'll tag you in that so you can review when I have that. And I think we can use this now bi-weekly forum to really drive this forward and end up with a document which we can say we think this is what we want to be doing, and propose that as a TAC and to the TAC, and make it official and make it a part of our charter on GitHub and so on. Does that sound right? Awesome. With that, moving on to next agenda item, Salsa update. Melba, Jay, Joshua, Mike, well, actually anyone, does it? I think there's lots of people who are closely involved in Salsa who would give a summary of where we are. Michael.
Yeah, I could talk a little. So 1.0 draft is, release candidate, I should say, is live. It's being, it's open for comment. We got actually a good deal of comments. Luckily, the majority of comments seem to be focused around a couple of key areas. Most folks grok most of it, but there's a little concerned about, in particular, like isolated and ephemeral and definitions around that, and a few other things as well as, hey, could it be clearer about why certain things were removed between V0.1 and 1? Like we have that information there, but it's mostly just how can we make it more visible. So that's pretty much on the specification side. Melba, do you want to take the positioning?
I put a bunch of notes in the positioning Slack channel. Essentially, we talked about that and how we need to communicate in terms of blogs, the whys and why should you care, why certain things happen, along with communications with Jennifer Bly. And we have a meeting later today about those comms for Salsa 1.0. But the other thing I did want to mention about Salsa that I thought was interesting, there was a survey last summer, and I'm looking for it. And essentially, in terms of Salsa's usefulness, adoption, it seems like there's a moderate to high adoption of Salsa based off of last summer, and the practices are considered useful. Some are hardly difficult, but some are hard, but difficulty doesn't appear to be a major impediment. So that's good news. And I've asked potentially OpenSSF to do a pulse check for all the SCI SIGs to see maybe quarterly, are people adopting these? Is it useful? Because if we have those data points, then we know if we need to pivot, I think more frequently. So it was a pretty good meeting. I don't know how many people we had, like maybe 10, 12, and I think that's the first time we've ever had that much of an audience. So I'm happy to see the traction in the SCI positioning.
Thanks, Melba. I wanted to add a couple of things. First of all, to re-emphasize, yeah, I thought that survey was super interesting. And so if you've not taken a look at that, I'm trying to dig up a link to it so I can put it in the doc. It was posted either this morning or yesterday in one of the OpenSSF Slack channels, known as the Salsa Plus Plus survey, I think. But it was really interesting data and very thoughtfully done. Also, Melba, I wanted to give you a shout out for putting the notes in Slack. Something that's occurred to me is that when the notes from these meetings exist in the doc, every time I want to find them, I need to go into my calendar. I need to remember what day the meeting was. I need to find the meeting, open it up, find the right of the 15 links that are in the meeting invite, accidentally end up in Zoom, close that, open the doc one. It's a pain, and I think most people don't do it. And so I think most people are fairly unaware of the proceeds of these meetings. And so I would like to propose adoption of that as a best practice, like putting a summary of notes in the Slack. If we had a mailing list for SCI integrity, which maybe we do, we could send that too. But like having a more push model for distribution of notes feels like a great thing to me. And Melba, I want to thank you for taking the lead there. Josh,
I want to wholeheartedly agree with the sentiment there. And yeah, just like putting them in Slack or on a mailing list seems good. Maybe even like the summarized notes in the repository for archival purposes might be useful. Just something to consider. But definitely agree, like making it easier to see what's happened without having to watch a long recording or dig through the Google Docs would be super useful. Thanks.
Totally. Cool. S2C2F update. Jay, I wasn't able to make the meeting yesterday. What's the latest with S2C2F?
Oh, good. I mean, it was a great meeting. We spent the bulk of the meeting discussing training modules with SKF. So we are partnering with SKF to develop some training modules that we plan on conducting here in the near future. 8-hour training block, and I think we're settling on 4 or 5 different modules in that training block. But it was a great conversation. We built out the outline for it and something that we can march forward with. And then, of course, we talked about the upcoming Open Summit, talked about the upcoming RSA presentation that Adrian will be giving. So all that stuff is forward marching. I mean, that's where we're at now. We even discussed one of the issues that David brought up, where we're going to actually we might be adding to the guidance a little bit based on some of the things he was saying, and not because it's a vulnerability that's likely to occur, but it's out there, and that we should let people know about it. And I think that was special too. So maybe some updates to the framework will happen. We have training that's being built, that's going to be that we're going to have completed and then be conducted sometime in the near future. And then, of course, presentations at RSA and Open Summit. The training portion of this, I do want to bring before the larger working group, especially once we get to a finalized state with it, because I think that will be great for the working group to get some eyes on itself. So definitely want to do that. That's what we had in our latest meeting, and where we're marching forward with at this point.
That's awesome. And getting into RSA, kudos there. I mean, the RSA is a big deal. It's difficult to get stuff accepted. Yeah, shout out to the team there. That's awesome. I was looking at the schedule the other day, and super pleased to see Adrian doing that stuff. Cool. Fresca, Michael, I'm guessing this was you who pasted this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So not a whole lot of movement over on Fresca the past month. There's a couple of different things going on, and I don't want to put anyone out on blast or anything like that, but it does sound like Fresca from some of the companies of some of the maintainers has been deprioritized. For myself, I don't have a ton of time so much to work on it, and I think it is one of those things where unlike and I don't mean this to it is one of the actual sort of code projects, right? You know, it is something that is and code, and so we need more contributors and maintainers. Would love to work with folks to kind of figure out what that might look like. Myself, I'm also, you know, I'm still able to obviously contribute and maintain it, but it is no longer like, you know, as big of a priority as it used to be for me. So I just don't have as much time on it, and it does require some, you know, a good deal of TLC, as well as, you know, some of the struggles that we've been running into has also been in sort of general adoption. There's a lot of folks who look at what Fresca is doing and say, hey, this is a really good example, but, you know, nobody's moving off of their Jenkins, let's say, or existing CIs. So there's some open questions about, hey, how do we want to move forward with Fresca? And so that's definitely something that we're looking for, you know, whether it becomes something more like, you know, just a representative example, or if it does transform into something else, or if there's things that we could do to sort of increase adoption. Definitely down to do that. And it kind of needs somebody to help, or, you know, a few folks to help contribute code as well as help steward the project. Melda.
So I think this is for everyone on the call. Fresca is going to be really key because, one, a talk that we submitted was based off Fresca tooling to say, we're going to show you how to do this in person. So we need people to go and help with this. If I were a hardcore developer, then I would totally do it, but it takes me 8 hours to write a hello world. I can do it, but it's going to take me a while. So if you know people, please, 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 because we do have a presentation in Vancouver in May that's around Fresca and showing this is how you can do Salsa, and this is how you can be Salsa compliant. And if we don't have that tool set, we're going to be in a world of hurt.
So I actually am just a lurker on most of the stuff that this that this group puts out, but I saw that this was the topic for the agenda, so that's why I came today, was to ask more questions about this. So Eddie Knight, Sonatype, I organize our open source engagements, and one of the things that's on the horizon for us next quarter is to be streamlining more engineering contributions. I say streamlining because I can't make any promises, but my job is going to be to remove obstacles and make recommendations for our engineers who are wanting to get more involved, especially with OpenSSF, because that's one of our biggest investments in the open source community. So what I would really, 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 really benefit from is a little bit more either conversation or documentation around, like, what are the gaps that you guys are trying to fill? What are the skill sets that you guys are needing? I'm a maintainer for an open source project that has 3 different working groups, so I'm very familiar with the desperate need for documentation that chronically exists inside of every project. But this is something that I really want to see if we can help get people on board with. But I need more conversation, documentation, anything that we can do to help get me up to speed with the need, so that way I can actually try to get people helping from our end.
Whoops. Yeah, that's actually something that I have for so the Fresca meeting is every other Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So it'll be happening on this upcoming Wednesday. It's on the OpenSSF calendar. And actually, one of the action items I do have to make sure I have for next week is sort of you know, I'm writing up a little bit of a what is Fresca, you know, based on, you know, there's been a bunch of presentations on Fresca at Cloud Native Security Con and some of the other events. And so just to kind of go through a little bit of what is Fresca, what is we're trying to actually hit, and what still needs to be done with it. You know, at a very, very high level, and I don't want to take up too much time here on it, but at a very high level, the idea behind Fresca was it came out of work that was happening in the CNCF around what was called the Secure Software Factory. And so the Secure Software Factory was a set of best practices around securing your build. And it was a bit more like, whereas Salsa is a bit more high level, these are the things that should get done. The Secure Software Factory is more like, and then here's how you actually implement that in a very good, easy to use way. And that's the architecture. And then Fresca came out of that architecture originally just as a demo. And then eventually people are like, hey, this seems like pretty good code. And then it turned into an actual project. And so it is a tool that utilizes as its components things like Tecton chains, Spiffy Spire, HashiCorp Vault, and other open source tools to provide that sort of secure build system that can implement Salsa at a high level or hit the high level Salsa requirements, be able to do things like, eventually the idea should be, be able to follow the practices that are coming out of S2C2F, follow the practices that are coming out of like the secure, SSD, the NIST's SSDF and so on, and be able to kind of be that thing while also being simple, right? So not everything, GitHub Actions are not going to work for everybody. And the idea would be something like Fresca could be a tool that could be deployed out into other people's environments that can do that. And that's kind of the high level goal. And the key things that we're just very quickly that we're looking to kind of get out of it most recently is the big thing is we're looking to develop a framework by which folks can write their builds. Because right now their builds are in, they're Tecton builds, but they're Tecton builds plus policy rules plus all these other things. And we use a language called Q to manage that, but we need a lot more effort to kind of make that simple. So the idea would be you just, you could just import the Golang pipeline and just fill in the blanks, and it makes sure that your build hits, Salsa 4, well, not Salsa 4, but what used to be called Salsa 4, because it could be hermetic, it could be all these other things and so on. Anyway, Josh?
I think you kind of answered some of my question, but I want to encourage you when you're writing this doc to think about whether this is for production use or reference architecture. I think it kind of attempts to straddle the line right now, but that might not. I'm not sure. Yeah, we should be explicit about whether we're trying to achieve both, I suppose. And then I'm really curious if we can articulate the architecture or the relationship between the different components in the architecture and like Fresca, so that we can effectively describe what Fresca does that those components don't do without that magic. And I think you started to hint at possibilities for what that could be, but it's not clear to me what that what that is today, right?
Cool. Do you mind if I, so I've been writing something up. Do you mind if well, actually, I'll put it out in the Slack when I'm done. I have a couple of documents I've been writing up around, hey, to folks who are not super familiar with Fresca, like myself, obviously I've been so deep in it, it's hard for me to know what are things that folks don't understand. And yeah, I think the main thing that we're trying to really kind of get across is to sort of say, look, something like Salsa, if you were to just take something like, not Jenkins X, but if you were to take something like the basic Jenkins, it's not something that's super easy without adding on a ton of stuff to make it Salsa compliant. And even then, there's an argument of, are the rules and the security concerns with Jenkins, does that make it just impractical to do high level Salsa? And it's the same way here, where something like Tecton and Tecton chains, well, Tecton itself doesn't get you any Salsa, but Tecton chains get you some Salsa. But then Tecton chains with signing keys get you Salsa 2, and then Tecton chains plus the Spiffy Spire work that we're still trying to get merged will get you to Salsa 3. But then the stuff around Fresca helps tie all that together, makes it simple, as well as potentially making it easier when these other salsa, like whatever it is, when salsa 2 comes out and we have higher level requirements or around hermeticity and so on. It's like, oh yeah, it'll be ready for that.
Yeah, that's good. So I think you were going to ask me to review what you're authoring, and please do like ping me when that's ready. I'm more than happy to review. The other thing I want to suggest as like a position for Fresca is, and I think you're there already, but I think it's worth articulating, is that I think it makes sense to push for Fresca to be as minimal as possible so that all the changes are in the constituent upstream, and Fresca is just like how to stitch that all together in a way that helps achieve what the working group here is recommending. And I think we potentially avoid some friction if we are explicit about that.
Yes. So the two other goals, which that brings up you brought up something very good there, right? Well, the two things are, if possible, it should just be in the upstream tools. And when not, Fresca can can fill the gap until one of the upstream tools does. And then finally, I think the third piece there is either way, Fresca should make it simple. Should make the need, make hitting the need simple. And yeah, I think one of the other challenges has been is since Fresca is an implementation of the secure software factory that came out of the CNCF. Some folks have read it, some folks have not read it, and I think a high level overview of what are the key pieces there is something else that I'm putting in there. Yeah, because like the summary, like I could honestly summarize in about 4 or 5 bullet points what are the key aspects of the secure software factory, and it's mostly just related to securing the orchestration of the build, securing the pipeline definition, right? To make sure that you can't run something silly. If you have to generate an SBOM, you generate an SBOM. You're required to. Secure the orchestration to make sure that an admin of your Kubernetes cluster or a sysadmin can't mess with a build. And then finally, you want to actually secure what the build is actually running and do introspection, whether it's ePBF or whatever, to say, hey, I want to know if my job reached out to malware.com and tried to download some malicious dependency. I want to know that. And those 3 things are really what the secure software factory is, and that's what Fresca tries to implement. And then while also hitting these other things like SSDF, SALSA, S2, C2F, and so on.
Okay, I wrote down the bullets. Those are actually really helpful for me. And so I have as the next section here, Michael. I tagged you in the doc to share what you're working on in terms of the write-up. Either with Josh first of all to get initial feedback, and then with the group, or just broadly with the group. But it would be great to get a bunch of eyes on this and help shape it and understand it and find the right way to drive it forward. With that, thank you all. This has been super productive. I will follow Melba's best practice, summarize the notes, post them in the Slack. We've got a bunch of updates, action items, which I will also follow up on. But thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your day.